All right, so Matt, I was walking through the woods here the other day, and I saw this suitcase just laying randomly in the woods. And I normally don't like touching stuff because, it's haunted. It can be weird. But I noticed curled up under the suitcase, there was a fox and 4 cubs. So,
really?
Yeah, I was a little worried about it. So I called the game wardens, told them what I'd found. And the guy was like, well, that's terrible. Are the foxes moving? And I said, well, I don't know, but I guess that would explain the suitcase. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
Hey, I'm good, brother.
Excellent. Same here. Just another day in paradise.
So, something just really weird happened today, just hours before. I got home from work and all the kids had something going on, which is rare that I get home and there's not at least one child here.
Mm-hmm.
So the house was completely empty.
So you walked around naked, huh?
So I walked around naked, it's what I do.
Right.
I get to do it maybe once in a blue moon. But no, so I went to the bathroom. I'd just gotten home. I went into the bathroom. And so my oldest she had class today. So she was an hour away, but I knew that she was on her way home. So I didn't think anything about it. So I'm in the bathroom. And I hear a door like open and close.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, Madison's home. No biggie. And I just kind of waited because she'll go, hey, I'm back or something like that. And I didn't hear anything. The dogs barked, everything. The dogs heard the door.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked and I thought, well, I didn't get a notification on my cameras. So I looked at my cameras for the outside and her car's not in the driveway. There's nothing at the front door. There was nothing to make that noise.
Weird.
So I thought, well, that's weird. So I just, I dismissed it and went on. So I went into the kitchen and I'm standing in front of essentially the cupboard. Okay. And then behind me, like down the hall, I hear like 3 to 4 hand claps. Like,
wow.
Pow, 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 pow. And I mean, it was a clap. It was not anything that I mistook. I mean, it sounded like somebody behind me clapping their hands, which is something that my son will do or something, So I just was like, what was that? I thought at first, Madison got home and she's messing with me.
Yeah.
But she wasn't home. Car wasn't there. Her room's empty. There's nobody in the house.
That's so weird.
And I was just like, man, this is freaky, But I swear, I mean, it was loud and it was a clap.
Yeah. Man, since you texted me about that, I've thought about it a few times. I can't figure out what would make it jump in activity like that. Because I know, you have stuff happen often, but it's been a while since you've had anything happen.
Yeah, it's been a good long while
and then,
since I've had anything like that happen.
With you saying your son will clap occasionally randomly, it makes me wonder if it's imitating things that it has heard, a door opening and closing. So it imitated that noise.
Yeah.
The hand clap, it imitated that because it doesn't know how. I mean, maybe it can't do anything. I don't know. It's just, that's freaky. That's weird. And I can't figure out why it just started doing it.
I know it's so weird because, I've seen been in this house 13 years. I've seen shadow people got the black tourmaline, no more shadow people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got tourmaline all over this house.
Yep. Same.
No shadow people. The only thing we really get anymore besides this today is we will smell cigarette smoke periodically.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
We have not smoked in the house in forever. I mean, we haven't smoked cigarettes in 8 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's been a long time. So it's not like there's a lingering,
right.
You know, it's not there. But we always attribute that to Amanda's granddad.
Yeah.
Because he was a heavy smoker. But yeah, you're right. Just out of the blue for something like that to happen, just bang, bang. And it could have been the fact that I was home alone.
Yeah.
And that I pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Maybe it happens and you just don't realize that's what's happening because you have a house full or something.
Yeah. Cause, you know, normally it's chaos, you know, over here.
Yeah.
So you've been here. Yeah. You know how it is.
Yep.
I got kids hanging off the rafters.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is strange that just out of the blue, I would have 2 incidents within about 10 minutes apart.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
So we want to say real quick, go check out the Podbelly Network at podbelly.com. You can go on there. You can find us. You can listen to us from there. But there's also a bunch of other shows that are also members of the Podbelly Network that you can listen to. And I promise you, there's going to be something on there you find that you enjoy and that you might not find elsewhere. So go check it out, podbelly.com. We also want to thank tonight's sponsors. We've got a new sponsor, Lumi Labs, and we'll talk about them shortly. And also Fume, who we've talked about before. But we'll talk about both those sponsors coming up in the episode. While you're on the internet, doing your internet thing, and as I always say, the stuff that you're putting on private browsing so your spouse doesn't see. Click off private browsing, go over to patreon.com/graveyardtales, sign up to become a patron. We've got 3 different levels. Our $10 a month patrons, they get the video version of us recording this episode. They get an ad-free audio version, plus they get an audio and video version of the bonus episodes. Our $5 a month gets the audio and video bonus episodes as well. And Matt and I are still working on, we're spitballing ideas for another perk for our $10 a month patrons. So go over there, patreon.com/graveyardtales. Check it out. There's going to be something on there that you enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a pretty extensive catalog now. And like I said, we've got more stuff in the works. So go check it out.
Right. All right. So let's talk microdosing, Matt. Now, I've been doing microdosing from Lumi Labs with their microdose gummies.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you want to benefit, but you don't want way too much. You know, I think we've all had the experience where you just get too much and you know, you don't feel right. You can't do what you're wanting to do.
Right. Yeah. You still got to be somewhat productive.
Right. Exactly. And since we found the microdose gummies from Lumi Labs, I tell you, man, it has changed my experience with body pain. And I mean, literally, I just took one about 10-15 minutes before we started recording because it doesn't make me super groggy. It doesn't make me go, whoo, you know, it keeps me level, even keeled, no anxiety, and it starts taking away the muscular pain that I have because it relaxes. As everybody knows, I've got chronic neck and shoulder pain. These microdose gummies have helped extremely. And microdose was created for endocannabinoid system support and all-around wellness. And it helps you feel like you on your best days every day.
Yeah, I mean, you can't beat that feeling. And everybody knows what it is. You know, you can remember when you were younger, you had that day, it was sunny, it was warm outside, and you felt like you could conquer the world. Everything felt good. You weren't hurting. You were in a great mood. And this is what microdose gummies can help you achieve again. I deal with anxiety. Sometimes the stress of the day is just a little bit more than will allow me to relax and enjoy my evening at home. Mm-hmm. And microdose gummies help fix that. And it's been a godsend.
It really has, yeah.
And microdose is available nationwide. To learn more about microdosing THC, go to microdose.com and use our promo code GRAVE, Grave, to get free shipping and 30% off your first order.
That's right. To learn more about microdosing THC, go to microdose.com. That's microdose.com, and use our promo code GRAVE, Grave, to get free shipping and 30% off your first order. Now, links can be found in the show description, but again, that's microdose.com, code GRAVE. So, Matt, that's all I've got for the intro here. So why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
Okay, so tonight, we came across a place that I'm really surprised we haven't come across before.
That's true, yeah.
And this is the Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town, South Africa. And I want to say we've talked about something in South Africa before, but I'm not 100% sure.
I don't know.
If we have, it's only been one other time, and it may have been something we just mentioned in passing.
Yeah.
But this place, not the reason I think, the reason I wonder why we didn't come across it before is it is such a landmark in South Africa. I mean, it is so well known and revered, and it has such a rich history behind it. Not all friendly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Why it's haunted. But it's a really interesting place. Like I said, a lot of history, a lot of dark history, which is, contributes to why it seems to be so active.
Right.
So, like I said, the history of this place is pretty interesting. So, Adam, why don't you tell us about the Castle of Good Hope?
All right. So as we always say, go check our sources. Down on the bottom of the show notes, you can find where we found all this information. You can continue the research if you're so inclined. And as always, we are the Cliff Notes version of the history on a lot of these places, because there's usually hundreds of years that it's been accumulating history, and I don't have the time to get into it, let alone my ADD won't let me get into it. So I try to do the Cliff Notes interesting version, but if something sparks your interest and you want to learn more, just go into our sources. And, especially for places like this that Matt and I cannot go investigate, then we rely heavily on people that have done it, people that live there, people that are able to travel there. So go check them out for the original source documents and all that stuff. But before we get into it, this is South Africa. And as always, I'm going to mispronounce stuff. It's going to happen. But like the argument I made in our Facebook group the other day, everybody would feel weird if I pronounced everything correctly. So you just, if I went through a full episode and didn't mispronounce something, you would feel creepy and like you needed a shower. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to mispronounce stuff. Now, because it's South Africa, and I blame Matt for this one, there are a lot of things in here that I didn't know how to say. So I did have to go to howtopronounce.com and stuff like that to figure some of these out. So I'll do my best.
And in my defense, I didn't realize it, that there was so much that would be hard to pronounce. But when we started researching it, I realized, oh yeah, there's a Dutch aspect to their dialect, and those words are hard to say.
Yep. And I texted Matt probably 2 or 3 times cussing him out for this. And I told him, I'm going to get him back. I'm going to find something that his stories are going to be so hard to pronounce that he's going to wish he hadn't picked South Africa for this one.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
But now the Castle of Good Hope, it's located at Darling Street and Boudicant Street in Cape Town, South Africa. And I mean, a lot of this information that I got in the beginning comes from early colonial information site. because they have documented the early colonial days of South Africa. Now, the Castle of Good Hope, it's the oldest surviving colonial building in South Africa, which is fascinating just to begin with nothing else. The castle was built in the 1600s. So that is it's been around for a long time.
Pretty old, yeah.
Yeah. And it was built in the shape of a pentagram, and it has 5 bastions on it. Now, a bastion, if you don't know, it's an angular defensive structure that projects outward from a curtain wall of a fortress. So usually it itself is triangular or pentagonal in shape, and these aren't really triangular. They're not really pentagonal, but they're closer to the pentagonal. I'll put some pictures up on Patreon so you can see it. But they were used for advanced defensive artillery platforms, which allowed for a depth of a defense force that allowed assailants to not get close to the fortress. So they were able to, if you think about it, you've got a wall. Well, if you're shooting from the wall, people could walk along the side of the wall real close to it and avoid your arrows. Mm-hmm. But if you've got a bastion sitting out there, you can go step to the end of that bastion and shoot them against your wall.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a great defensive fortification for something like this.
And I mean, it is super cool.
Yeah.
Looking at it. I mean, It is the way it's built, and considering when it was built. I mean, to me, I'm looking at it going, it's genius.
Yeah.
The way it's constructed.
Yep.
But yeah, looking at aerial view of it, man, it is nuts how cool it looks.
Yep. And I'll mention it later, but because you would think where it's located and all that we'll get into, but you would think it would have been attacked so many times by militaries wanting to. It's never been attacked. And it's probably because of how fortified this thing is. But I'll talk about that more in a minute. The castle itself blended both the medieval and English Renaissance architecture. And before land reclamation forced the building inland, it was originally a marker of the Table Bay shoreline. So the land reclamation, they were basically building on land into the water. So they didn't pick up the fortress and move the fortress back. They added more land to the front of it. So it pushed the water further away. But this fortress was once the center of civilian, administrative, and military life in the Cape. The castle formed part of a formidable defense system at the Cape that discouraged attack. And like I said, it's never been attacked itself, which is just amazing to me.
I know that, especially considering its location and how strategic it would have been to control that southern point of Africa.
Yep. If you took that, then you could take the southern coast of Africa, but nobody ever tried. And it's probably the building itself, the structure of it, and it looks mean. Like if you think about, you're an attacking army, where are you going to go that you're not going to get hit? Mm-hmm. So it was very smart in doing that. Well, let's look at the building of it. Now, in 1664, there were some tensions between Britain and the Netherlands, and it renewed these rumors of war. So there was this fear of a British attack on the Cape. So with this, a 5-pointed stone castle, similar to such fortifications in Europe and the East, was built. So this is all due to 1664. They thought there was going to be a war that landed on their shores. Well, the site of the castle was chosen in 1665 by the commissioner Ysbrand Gosk, not sure. Didn't look that one up, sorry. Who later became the first governor of the Cape. Now, Peter Dombear, as the engineer, was responsible for the construction of the castle, which was actually, it was the castle itself was built by slaves and burghers. Now, historically, burghers refers to a non-slave or serf citizen of a town, typically members of the wealth bourgeoisie, and the khoi khoi, which was the traditional nomadic indigenous population of southwestern Africa. So the burghers, and I had to look this up because I didn't know it. It's shocking that I didn't know something. I know, but the burghers, they were, when that area was colonized and taken over, well, there were certain people that were enslaved, but then they either paid their way out of slavery and indentured servitude, or they were just granted, you don't have to be a serf anymore, whatever. So they called them the burghers, Burghers. So all them and company workers built this castle. The foundation of the Castle of Good Hope, it was dug actually in 1665. And the cornerstones of the first bastion were laid on January 2nd of 1666. Well, after that, the building of the castle started with haste. They were like, we got to get this thing up and we got to do it now. There's going to be a war. Well, the building of the castle was actually delayed when peace returned to Europe in 1667. But the first bastion, Leerdam, was completed on November 5th of 1670. It was followed by the Buren, the Katzenellenbogen, Nassau, and Orange. The 5 bastions were named after the main titles of William III of Orange-Nassau on April 26, 1679. So the height of the walls of the bastion on the seaside are about 10 meters tall, and those on the land side were even higher. So it's not even across the whole thing, but it makes sense on what you would do. You'd make the land side taller to make it harder to scale. The one on the seaside is a little bit shorter, so you can shoot stuff over it at ships or whatever.
Right.
But again, that's the genius engineering.
They didn't have to do that.
Right. They didn't have to be done, but that's what they were planning for. Yep.
They didn't have to do it.
Hey, it's better to not need it and have it than need it and not have it.
But yeah, and you might be right. I mean, nobody, with it there, nobody felt like that it was worth, the loss of life that it would be to potentially fail. So maybe it was a big deterrent, and everybody just said, "Nah, well, we're not going to do it."
Right. Now, in 1679, they finally completed the castle, and it was called a castle because of its defensive structure and because it had a small community, on its own, like within it, which was similar to the castles in Europe. So inside the walls, there was a church, living quarters, bakery, offices, workshops, cells, and other facilities, just a bunch of stuff within the castle, which is cool. It was like its own town. So they did it a lot like the castles in Europe. So I think that's cool too, just having all that. But they chose yellow paint for the walls of this castle because it reduced the glare from the sunlight and it reflected less heat because the South African sun is intense.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I was reading about it, and I don't know if you remember when Mandela was imprisoned there and forced to work, he actually got damage to his eyes because he was out there in the South African sun working with no protection, and he actually damaged his eyes from the sun. So the yellow paint was so that if you're looking at the castle, you're not blinded and roasted from the reflection. Yeah.
I guess if you paint it white, it's going to reflect everything. But then again, if you paint it black or a dark gray, it's going to absorb all that heat.
Turns into an oven.
Yeah. And then you're walking around inside going, is it hot? Is it hot in here to you?
I'm roasting in here.
Your buddy's over there, he's melting.
It's like the Texas summer. One summer when I was in marching band, we practiced on the blacktop, all of the soles of everybody's shoes were melted smooth by the end of the practice season.
Oh my God.
The tread had actually worn down from the heat and as you're walking, and it's just the melting of the rubber. It was crazy, but be totally worse if you were in this castle in South Africa and somebody painted it black.
Yeah.
You'd be, I mean, shirt would just spontaneously combust. Now, the castle, it can be entered through the main gateway, which was from the Grand Parade and Central Halls, or the City Hall side. Between 1682 and 1684, this entrance was built to replace the original entrance, which was situated between the Buren and Katzenelnbogen bastions. The pediment above the entrance bears the crowned lion with the 7 arrows of unity in its paw, which was the coat of arms of the United Netherlands. There was also 2 smaller entrances to the castle. On the architrave below are carved the arms of the Dutch cities in which the United East India Company had chambers. So on either side of the entrance are the statues of Mercury, the god of commerce, and Neptune with the trident, which is the god of the sea.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting symbolism there, because it was the hub of commerce and all that, and then it was right on the sea. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's all intentional, but it's all pretty cool. I like the symbolism there. Now, the inner courtyard of the castle is divided by a wall. The wall is approximately 380 feet in length. It's 39 feet high, 11.5 feet wide at the bottom, and 6.5 feet wide at the top. This is a big wall.
Mm-hmm.
Buildings were actually erected on either side of the wall, and this was done to protect the citizens in the castle if it were ever to be attacked. So they thought, okay, if it's going to be attacked, the citizens can run to one side of the wall or the other and get away from the attacking army. Yeah. You know, we'll put our army on the attack side and put them on the opposite side. Now, what I found was interesting is sundials were used to tell the time in the early years of the Cape. Well, there's a sundial on the eastern side, which is above the ceremonial office, and it was used to tell the time in the morning. In the afternoon, the sundial next to the balcony was used. The time of the sundials was the official time for the entire Cape settlement. So it's like we've got, back when we were younger, Matt, you had time and temperature that you could call.
Oh, yeah.
That was the official time, before you got the satellite clocks and all this stuff. Well, that's basically what this was. It was time and temperature. You called up the castle and you said, hey, what time is it? And some dude ran out and looked at the sundial and goes, well, it's 2 shadows past 3. So. That
helps me none.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's see. We're at 1,800 shadows. What? Huh? Well, the settlement was kept informed by the time, which there was a bell in the bell tower. And so they were kept informed by the ringing of this bell every hour on the hour. Can you imagine how annoying that would get? You're working, sitting at your desk, working, writing some tome or something with your quill, and you hear bung. And a little bit later, you've got nothing written, and you hear bung again, and you're like, crap, it's been an hour? Really?
Yeah.
That would just be annoying. I don't like to know what time it is when I'm working. Just let me work.
There's a church up here by me that, it still goes off.
Oh, jeez.
I
think it's cool, but
cool.
If I have to hear it while I'm working, that's my problem.
If you were there, if you were like right underneath it,
mm-hmm.
I could see where it might not be cool all the time, every day.
Right. Or if you were the dude having to ring the bell all the time.
Yeah.
Now, you say, okay, you got sundials, right? Well, how do you know what time it is at night? Doesn't work because the sun's out. So if it was night or the sun wasn't out shining where you could pick it up, time was actually kept by means of an hourglass. So the Rodenganger, which was the guard on duty, turned the hourglass and rang the bell. So this dude had to sit there and turn the hourglass over every hour or 2 hours, however long, and he'd ring the bell. every time he flipped the hourglass.
In the middle of the night?
In the middle of the night. He was ringing the bell every hour. That would drive me nuts, Matt.
I'd be the guy standing there in my pajamas going, man, I will pay you to not ring this daggum bell.
Mm-hmm. I would like just like one night where you didn't wake me up every hour with this stupid bell.
Yeah. Let that guy off at 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a moat that was originally around this castle. Sections of the moat around the castle have actually been restored now. The original moat was 82 feet wide, and it was filled with water from the streams of Table Mountain. So it was a big moat. Well, the building of the moat started on November 26, 1677, but unfortunately, they said the moat quickly became foul-smelling because of the drainage system that they had. It was inadequate, and the residents of the castle used it as a trash dump.
Ah, okay.
So that's, I guess even in the 1600s, people were like, oh, water, let me throw crap in the water. It'll go away.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. So in 1896, the moat on the seaside of the castle was filled up to make way for the rail line that came through. Well, then later, the whole moat was actually filled up. But I think it's cool that they've restored some or all of it. I don't know how much of the moat they've restored, but they've restored at least part of it. Now, the Castle of Good Hope was used as a prison during the Second Boer War. And Boers, those are farmers. So that's, if you're not in South Africa, you've probably heard of the Boer Wars, but you didn't, maybe like me, know what a Boer was. It's a farmer. And that was from 1899 to 1902. Well, Fritz Joubert Duquesne, leader of the Duquesne spy ring, was caught and imprisoned here. He nearly escaped, though, by digging his way through the thick cement wall, using just an iron spoon, working night after night. I don't know how you do that.
I don't either.
That is incredible.
It's like Shawshank Redemption, It's like, how do you do that?
Yeah. But used an iron spoon, and he almost got out. But the problem was, a large stone slipped and nearly crushed him to death. So he's tunneling through this wall. He gets to almost out, and then a stone close to the outside loosens and falls on him, and it almost crushes him to death. Well, he was found by his guard the next morning, unconscious, but still alive. There's a torture chamber in the castle. You can't have an old castle without a torture chamber.
And that's where that poor guy went.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Once he was back to health, that's where he went. But the torture chamber was called Donker Gat, or the Dark Hole, and it's a windowless dungeon. It's what you expect from a dungeon. Windowless, dank, dark. But one of the messed up things is that it flooded in the winter. So if there were prisoners in there during the winter, they drowned in the dungeon just from it flooding.
And that was just okay.
Yeah, they just let it happen. They didn't say, oh, well, this is flooding. We need to move it, better conditions for our prisoners.
Yeah.
They just said, well, we'll just torture them till winter, and then they'll drown, and then we'll put new prisoners in there the next year.
Yeah, and that,
come spring, we'll get a new set of prisoners.
The Donker Gat reminds me of the oubliette, that European castles would have.
Yeah.
That essentially just a hole where they just, push the prisoners down. Okay, you're done.
Yeah.
And they were just left down there to die.
Yep. It stuff like that. I can't imagine it. But the Zulu king, Cetshwayo, also spent time as a prisoner in the castle. And this was after he was captured in the Nome Forest after the defeat of the Zulu nation by the British at Ulundi in 1879. Well, subsequent to the defeat of Ulundi, which dealt a death blow to the Zulu kingdom, King Quechueo achieved the greatest victory against the British forces ever achieved by an indigenous army at the Battle of Esandwala. So in 1936, the castle was declared a historical monument. Now, from 1669, it was known as a national monument, and since April 1st of 2000, it was known as a provincial heritage site. The first site in South Africa to be protected like that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Now, there have been extensive restorations on it that were completed during the 1980s, and it made the castle the best preserved example of a Dutch East India Company fort. So prior to being replaced in 2003, I had to add this because I thought this was kind of cool. Prior to being replaced in 2003, the distinctive shape of the pentagonal castle was used on South African Defense Force flags. It formed the basis of some rank insignia of major and above, and was used on the South African Air Force aircraft. So it was replaced. Apparently it's not that anymore, but that's what they had picture of this fortress, like an outline of this fortress on flag. Majors and above would have it on their lapel. It just stood for high ranking and mean, it was intimidating.
It just goes to show how integral it is to the history of South Africa that they recognize it on those on flags and on uniforms. So it's a key part of their history. You know what, Adam? We've all got bad habits. Mm-hmm. I've got a bad habit. Well, I've got multiples. You've got probably way more than I do.
That's true.
And stopping habits cold turkey is really tough. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is the hardest way to do anything like that. So finding something that can make it a little bit easier, and to help you really kick a bad habit, you need something, and that's where our sponsor Fume comes in.
Right.
Because Fume takes the problem and looks at it in a different way. Not everything that's a bad habit is wrong. So instead of drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit?
That's right. Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air, and instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. So you get what we're saying. Instead of bad, Fume is good. And it's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Now, the cool thing that I've found with Fume, well, there's a few cool things I've found with Fume. I can walk around the store, and if that craving hits, instead of, I'll be back, running outside in the heat, the rain, the cold, and doing that, then I can just pull out the Fume, breathe through it a couple times, and I get that oral fixation that's really what is the root of the craving. Mm-hmm. I can get that out of the way, and it tastes good. They have multiple different flavors to choose from in their little pod things, and you just put them in there, breathe through it, and it tastes great. It feels great. It's a metal and wood thing. It's nice and heavy, like it's weighted well. So you feel like you're holding something. It looks cool. I mean, it's got that wood grain on one end of it, and it's very tactile. If you need like a fidgety thing, you can sit there and spin it and click it, or it's got a magnetized end that you can go chick, 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 chick. Get that hand fixation out of the way, the fidgeting thing.
That's right. I love that aspect of it and the weight of it. I mean, you could stick a toothpick in your mouth or a straw. It's not exactly the same. When you got something that's it's substantial, it feels different, and it helps with those those urges.
That's right. And you can join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com. That's TRYFUM.com and use the code TALES, TALES, to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today.
Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy. Head to tryfume.com, TRYFUM.com, and use our code TALES, TALES, to save 10% when you get the Journey Pack today. And you hear, it's been used for different things and not always pleasant.
Right.
And because of this, and because of its uniqueness in the shape and the styling and the fact that it was so old, legends began to rise about the Castle of Good Hope. And the one legend that is the most common one you find is kind of a backstory as to why it may have so much paranormal activity. And so this is how this legend goes. One night, when the full moon shone over the old castle, a group of brave adventurers decided to explore and find out the truth of why this seemingly peaceful place had become such a source of fear and terror. After making their way through the gates, they soon discovered that the place was animated by supernatural forces, as a pair of glowing red eyes could be seen in the shadows, and endless screams echoed in the air. As the group delved deeper into the castle, they were filled with an unexplainable dread, as if an unseen force was waiting for them. Eventually, they stumbled upon an ancient chamber deep within the castle where a gruesome ritual was being held. There, the witch from ages past had conjured a powerful demon that seemed to be the source of all the castle's haunting mysteries. With no other options, the group fought against this horrifying entity and managed to vanquish the beast and disperse the curse that had haunted the Castle of Good Hope for so long. Though the castle had been freed from its dark curse, the adventurers knew that its walls still had held many secrets, and the tales of what had happened within its walls still linger to this day. So, and that is a legend. There is no names, no times, no dates associated with it. It is a legend. But as it mentions, the castle was already known to have quite a bit of supernatural activity going on within the walls. Now, as Adam said, the castle was used as a prison, and numerous prisoners were incarcerated. And they used the Donkergat, or the dark hole, as the torture chamber. And as Adam said, some people would die when the hole flooded. But one other weird thing that they did is, because this hole was windowless, it was pitch black, they would bring prisoners out of there blindfolded, walk them out, and then take their blindfolds off. Okay. Now, Adam already mentioned, that Nelson Mandela, his eyes were damaged by that South African sun. These people would come out after having been in total darkness for however long, and then just exposed to the sun, and it resulted in instant blindness.
Mm-hmm.
Your eyes have probably barely gotten accustomed to pitch blackness. Right. And then you're going to shine, this, the brightness of the sun, in the southern hemisphere, right there at the tip of Africa, and just blind these people.
Yeah.
So, not a pleasant experience at all. You'd be like, man, you could have just left me down there.
Yep.
They're like, "Oh, don't worry, we're going to put you back. You're blind, so it's all dark now." And then they shove him back in the hole. But the first documented account of paranormal activity in the castle occurred in 1915 when a mysterious 2-meter tall figure was observed on the battlements of the castle. 1915. So this strange figure was again noticed in 1947 when it was leaping over the battlements. Now, this strange described semi-luminous ghost that was seen, it was reported over a period of a few weeks, and it usually would walk somewhere between the Leerdam and the Orange bastions. Okay, so the bastions all had names, and that's where, this figure was seen. But then it would be seen leaning over the parapet, staring down onto those people on Darling Street. So it wasn't weird. It wasn't like a one-shot deal. This went on for several weeks, and it had happened, some 30 years before.
Yeah.
The same figure in the same general location. Now, today, workers and visitors report hearing voices and footsteps in the dungeon down in the dark hole in the Donker Gat and throughout the building's narrow corridors. The bell in the bell tower sometimes rings of its own accord. See, they were like, okay, we stopped ringing this bell in the middle of the night. But now some ghost is in there ringing the stupid bell in the middle of the night.
Right.
But here's the problem. They bricked up the bell tower centuries ago. So there's
Weird.
No way anybody could get up there and actually ring it. But one legend tells of a soldier who hung himself by the bell rope. So there's an idea that this must be that soldier's ghost that's ringing the bell. And so while I was typing this up, I was going, what if what was actually seen? What if you saw an apparition and it's not the ghost up there ringing the bell? It's him hanging himself by the rope.
Oh, yeah.
And that force of him hanging himself rings the bell. And if you got in there and looked, you could see the apparition hanging from the rope. Don't get me wrong. That's not what's been described. I just thought that would be a really cool, spooky thing to happen.
Yeah. That would freak you out if you saw that for sure.
But just the bell ringing in a blocked up belfry, that's really creepy because, I mean, these type bells, it's not like jingle bells. There's no sleigh bells. They're up there going ting, 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 ting. I mean, these bells are huge. It's not something you can just go up and go ring. You really got to put some force into it. So if an entity was going to be able to generate enough energy to ring this bell, that's a lot. That's a lot of energy, for something that's that size. To be moved and then, loud enough to strike. So I thought that's a pretty cool story to go along with this castle. But other stories have told about footsteps that pace along the battlements between the two bastions of Leerdam and Buren. After World War II, these footsteps were accompanied by a floating human shape without legs. So I thought that was very unique. We've got disembodied footsteps, but for some reason after World War II, along with those footsteps, there was an apparition of a legless individual, a legless human shape, almost like a soldier who had lost his legs in the war. So, I mean, I've not ever heard of that where it's like, the haunting that occurs right here is footsteps, but after a while they added an apparition to it.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, wait a minute, that's like something Disney does at the Haunted Mansion, you know?
Right.
We've replaced the footsteps with an actual apparition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I could not find a lot about this. There is said to be the ghost of a sad-faced woman. That's all she's described as, a sad-faced woman. She wears a long gray cloak, and she walks through the castle at night. Now, of course, she is sometimes referred to as the lady in gray. So, everybody's got to have a lady in whatever color clothes.
Right.
And this one is no different. But I did find it where they referred to her as a sad-faced woman. No other information I could find about who this might be, because they have associated some of the hauntings with individuals that were there at the castle over the centuries. Adam will like this one. There is a spectral black dog that is said to haunt the castle grounds. It actually lunges at people, and right before it would get to them, it disappears.
Man, that'll make you poop yourself.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned that luminous guy that was, he would seen leaping from the castle walls. Well, when that guy jumps, he falls all the way, but disappears before he hits the ground. There is a situation where a man and a woman's voices are heard arguing near the guard's room. Okay, so you hear the sound of two people arguing. When they go check it out, there's nobody there. But what they do see is this weird, shapeless figure. So like kind of like a dark,
like a mist.
Yeah, like a mist or a shadow, but not a form of a person or anything distinct. But there's an electrical bell that's heard right here. In this same area where the argument occurs, where the shapeless form is, they hear an electrical bell. And I was trying to think, what is an electrical bell? I guess it would be like a modern telephone. Would have an electrical bell. But there's nobody there that would cause it to ring. And I'm not even sure they know what's ringing.
That's weird.
It's not like there's a payphone sitting right there.
Maybe somebody during restoration shoved a weird phone or something in there, and they just
shoved it down in one of the rocks. This
call
will
it occasionally just to freak people out. Yeah,
yeah. Well, they'll get a kick out of this. But to this day, soldiers who guard the castle would rather walk all the way around the outside of the building rather than pass through the haunted archways in the wee hours of the morning.
Understandable.
Yeah. I mean, it's creepy. And if you're out there in the middle of the night walking around, you're like, if you go over there, you're going to hear some of this stuff and it'll freak you out. So let's go around.
Yep. Take the long way.
Let's go take the long way. And Hilton Fredericks, who has done guard duty on that 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. shift, he says bizarre things do occur in these hours. He says one night a guard heard someone screaming for help and voices coming from the dungeon and the torture chamber. When he went to investigate, there was no one there, but he felt a presence. His body became ice cold and the hair stood up on his arms and on the back of his neck.
I'd make a terrible guard, because if there was nobody, I knew there's nobody in the dungeon, and I heard somebody screaming for help, I don't know if I'd go down there.
That's right.
Because it's like, okay, it's 3:00 in the morning. Somebody's screaming for help in a dungeon I know is empty. I ain't doing that.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, it's your turn to go check the creepy dungeon.
I mean, it's not like people just didn't know it was there and they just walked by, fall in.
Right.
Hey.
Right.
I got up to get a glass of milk and I fell in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he also says that some of the guards refuse to go past the Donker Got when they're making the late night rounds because they say it feels like there's a powerful force or a vacuum that wants to suck them in.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. You know, there's that phenomena where when you stand on the edge of something really tall, that it's called the call of the void, I think is what it is, where that urge you have to just jump off into it.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't have that crap.
I don't either. I'm like, I want to go the other way.
Yeah, I'm the dude backing up or getting down on all fours and slowly backing away from a high precipice.
Yeah. I'm not big on heights either. Nope. I'm not so much afraid of heights as I am of falling. And so falling occurs at the edge. So that's why I stay clear of the edge.
Well, and mine's not so much the falling, it's the sudden stop at the end I'm more worried about.
Oh, I had a shirt in high school that said, it's not that life is so short, it's that you're dead for so long.
Yeah, that's a good saying.
Yeah. All right, so Fredericks adds that in 1952, a couple were granted permission to spend a night in the castle during the Van Riebeck Festival. During the night, they woke up to find a lance corporal waking up the soldiers. When they asked what he was doing, he said the bus drivers and bus conductors were protesting and rioting in the city streets. Okay. The next day,
interesting.
When the couple tried to find out about this incident, there was nothing in the newspapers. They asked the staff what had happened during the night, but no one knew what they were talking about. So this was obviously, you know, a spirit that was replaying an event that could have happened, you know.
Stone tape. You
know, years and years ago. I'm assuming it wasn't that far. You know, this is 1952.
Yeah,
so buses, you know.
It's not like they had buses in the 1600s unless it was
that's right.
A bus pulled by a horse or something.
So it was pulled by a greyhound. You know, it was a cart. They had a greyhound dog. That's where they started. That's where the bus line started.
And that is the angry dog figure that you see at the castle.
That's exactly right. They just had a bunny on a stick and a string, and they held it out in front of him, and he took off. All right, we're on our way.
Still to this day, he's chasing a bunny.
Now, Ashley France, who was a tour guide and guard at the castle, said that when he first did his ghost shift in the 1990s, he had a frightening experience. He said it was pitch dark when he was walking through the archway near the Donker Got, and it was late at night, and a strange feeling came over him, and he saw someone waving at him. He said,
"Did he wave back?"
Hey, what's up? Let's go.
Yep. I'm just going to back away slowly and wave. Hi.
You don't hear a lot about ghosts that wave to you.
No, you
nice.
don't.
They're friendly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Unique.
Yeah, but France says, I knew there were only two of us on duty, and the other guard was on the other side of the castle. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I tore a piece of my pants and scraped my shin when I ran past barbed wire near the gate. Yeah.
And he tore the piece of his pants because he projectile pooped out the back of it.
Yeah. Pew!
Wave, and he's like, oh.
Like Bugs Bunny cartoon where the little hairpins are spinning where they were. Pew!
Or the and then poof.
All right. Abe Berg, who has worked as a caretaker at the castle for more than a decade, is another one who has experiences with the spiritual realm. He says, with fear evident on his face, he said one night there was a function at the castle. He had to sleep over because there was no transport to take him home. During the night, I felt this heaviness on my chest, and my body felt as if I was tied up. I couldn't move. Eventually, I struggled free, kicking and screaming, and ran out of the room. I stayed awake until sunrise. I bet you did. He was afraid to go back to sleep, you know?
Yep.
That
would've stayed
sounds
awake,
like
too.
a sleep paralysis kind of condition there.
That's what I thought.
And maybe that was brought on by all the other activity that's going on.
Yeah, could be. Or there was something there that was causing it, just one entity that was causing it and just messing with him.
Yeah. Because he was there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what are you doing here? You know.
Yep. There's nobody that sleeps here anymore.
Yeah. Now, the education officer at the castle, Carl Kapersky, says he often works late at night and that there's definitely a presence. Sometimes it's an uncomfortable feeling. He said, but you are definitely not alone. He says, you are being watched.
Yeah,
now,
that's a creepy feeling.
Uh-huh. Now, Lady Anne Bernard is another spirit that's known to haunt the castle up until this day. Now, Lady Bernard lived there in the late 18th century. As the First Lady, she was responsible for entertaining important guests that visited the castle. She seems to keep on doing this. Even though she passed away over 2 centuries ago, she appears whenever the castle is visited by important people. So, you know,
Wow.
here is a spirit that is just replaying her role. You know, and that is an intelligent haunting. You know, if her spirit is only seen or more commonly seen during events at the castle or when there's esteemed guests that are coming for a visit, and then she appears, that's intelligent. You know, that's not stone tape. That's not just replay. That's a spirit making a decision. Oh, it's time for me to do my duty.
Highly aware of what's going on around her.
Exactly. Because at 2 centuries ago, she's not going to know who, you know, is this person important? Is this person a tourist? Is this just some, you know, average Joe? Or is this some diplomat? But apparently
some dummy with a podcast coming to check out.
Yeah. So it doesn't say how important, you know, you got to be to get Lady Bernard to appear.
True.
You know,
We might be important enough.
it could be. So
Maybe.
it's worth a shot.
If I dress up, maybe.
Now, there's another ghost that keeps popping up, and I love this story. This is great. And it's Governor Peter Gisberg. I don't know what GIJ is, so I had one too.
Gisbert, probably, yeah.
Peter Gisbert. Actually, his full name is Peter Gisbert van Noot. Now, like I said, he was the governor, and it said that he was a very strict and militant man. During his time, Van Noot sentenced 7 men to death on April 23rd, 1728. He refused to grant a prisoner's last wish right before his hanging. The prisoner then cursed Van Noot. Later that same day, Van Noot was found dead in his office.
Oh, wow.
He had died of a heart attack, even though he was completely fine that morning. Today, workers and visitors experience his bitter presence, and they often hear him cursing and swearing inside the castle walls.
That would be me as a ghost. Why am I still here?
If I get asked to turn on another light, I'm going to...
If one more jerk in a totally black outfit comes here and bows up on me, I swear to I'm gonna.
But that's crazy, you know.
Dang bagels.
I mean, just the actual story of him dying in his office after he was cursed by one of the prisoners that was being executed.
I know skeptics would say, well, you know, you can be fine and your heart just shuts down. Yeah, it can.
Yeah,
it can. I mean, but that's just weird coincidence. And you know me, I'm not a big fan of coincidences. There's usually a reason for everything. And I know, you know, then you wouldn't have the same understanding of medical knowledge to look at his heart and go, oh yeah, you got plaque buildup, and
Yeah.
that's why he had a heart attack. But dang, that's weird.
I know I mean, what are the odds that those two things would happen simultaneously and that one didn't have anything to do with the other? But I included this, even though this is not necessarily, it's not directly related to the Castle of Good Hope, but it is related to Cape Town, and it's a very famous story. And there's, like I said, another well-known ghost that is found around the Cape, and that is the Flying Dutchman. And the Flying Dutchman is a sailing ship that appears out of the mist and then suddenly disappears again. Now, the legend has it that the Dutch sea captain was making his way around the Cape into the teeth of a terrible gale that was lashing the Cape at the time. His passengers and crew begged him to turn back, but he refused and continued to drink and sing obscene songs. He even challenged the wrath of God by swearing a blasphemous oath. Fearing for their safety, the crew and passengers rebelled, and in the fight that followed, the captain killed and threw the body of the leader of the mutineers overboard. As his body hit the sea, a shadowy figure appeared on board and told the captain he was a very stubborn man. The captain threatened the shadowy figure with his gun and ordered him off the ship. When he was ignored, the captain took a shot at the figure and his gun blew up in his hand. The shadowy figure then cursed the captain and told him that as a result of his actions, he was condemned to sail the seas for eternity, never reaching port or having a moment's peace. The captain was also condemned to drink gall for the rest of eternity. And if you don't know what gall is, it's essentially like bile, that green stomach acid stuff, disgusting. And then to consider this guy was now cursed to drink it for the rest of eternity. But since that time, the Flying Dutchman has been seen sailing the sea routes, leading ships astray, and onto hidden reefs. So all of that right there at Cape Town, and amazingly enough, there is a lot of haunted history in Cape Town. But by far, the Castle of Good Hope is, the most active location there in South Africa. And it's not only that, it's one of the oldest buildings, or the oldest building. It's got all this history. So, along with all that, and then being right there at the sea, it just seems like there's just a buildup of energy that, allows these entities to persist even to the modern day. So, and we've talked about the Flying Dutchman before, Adam, you and I have. And it was really cool because I had never heard this version of the legend, and that it was so closely tied to South Africa.
I was going to say, I never really knew it was tied that closely to South Africa or the Cape of Good Hope.
Yeah. But it makes sense. It's the Flying Dutchman. And like I said, Dutch history is a big part of South African history. So, I thought it was amazing. But, so much different activity going on, there in the Castle of Good Hope, everything from, voices and footsteps to entities, full-on apparitions, so much stuff. And, even you could tie, a ghost ship in there with it. It really, I think it lives up to its title as the most haunted place in South Africa for sure.
I agree.
But what do you guys think? I know we have at least one listener that's been with us for a long time that's in South Africa. We actually met this guy at one of our live events several years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, have we garnered some more listeners? I have a feeling if you live in or around Cape Town or probably anywhere in South Africa, you know the Castle of Good Hope, you know some of the stories and legends. And if there's some that we didn't mention, we would love to hear them. The best place to share those things is in our Facebook group. It is called The Graveyard. Thousands of members. It is incredibly active. And it's a safe place. Nobody's going to make fun of you. We just want to hear those great stories and personal experiences. So, if you haven't already, jump in there and check out, one of the best groups, out there. And when you're done there, you can slide over to our website, which is graveyardpodcast.com. And there you can find links to purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise. You can listen to the show and you can become a patron. We always, take time every show to thank our Patreon followers. Their donations are what allow Adam and I to continue to do this and do it at the level that, our listeners expect,
Right.
So, thank you for that. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. It brings us up the chart and it makes it easier for people to find the graveyard. So until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.